Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait about 2 minutes to get started to allow everybody to get online. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Leitch, and I'm the chair of the Motion Picture Production Industry Association of BC. I'd like to welcome everyone on behalf of the MPPIA Board of Directors and our members for this 4th information session to update you on the safe return to work in British Columbia in the motion picture industry. We wish to acknowledge those nations of whose lands we live and work. This event will have us gathering in a virtual format with people from all across BC. Given that land acknowledgements are specific to each region, we urge each of our participants to visit the Native Land Digital website to identify on which First Nations territories you are located. We would like to recognize the tremendous contribution that the healthcare workers, first responders, and all those that have contributed to keeping essential services running have made to our daily lives. We are truly grateful for their dedication and service. We are also proud of the work that the BC Provincial Government has done in implementing informed and well thought out health and safety policies and protocols that have been supported by the majority of British Columbians. The low COVID-19 numbers in BC are a major factor in allowing us to return to work safely. There's been a lot of work done to prepare us for the safe return to work by employers, unions and guilds, the CMPA, the MPPIA, AMPTP, MPA, Act Safe, Work Safe, and of course, the Provincial Health Authority. As I have said before, in BC, one of our competitive strengths is a strong industry collaboration between all industry stakeholders. It is my pleasure to introduce our panel today as follows. Marnie G., BC Film Commissioner and Director of Production Services for Creative BC. Phil Klapwyk, Business Representative of the IATSE Local 891, and Vice Chair of MPPIA. Kori, Representative of Film and TV for UBCP ACTRA. Norma Patton-Lowen, Makeup Artist Extraordinaire. Kate Green, Film and Television Executive Producer, Creator, and Director. And Hans Dayal, last but not least, Production Manager, Location Manager, and part-time comedian. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our first panelist, our BC Film Commissioner, Marnie G. Marnie.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I live and work on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nations, and I respect the land and honor this tradition of land acknowledgement that dates back centuries for Indigenous people. And with this acknowledgement, I thank those Indigenous people who still live on and care for these lands. I'm going to try to be brief today because I have been fortunate enough to be on a few of these, and I just wanted to give a quick update in terms of the work that Creative BC and the Provincial Film Commission has been doing over the last few months. I'm going to jump right in to talk quickly about the health and safety protocols, and there's a number of them. We started with WorkSafe BC releasing their health and safety protocols for the motion picture industry, and those are of course live on their website. Great information. They provide a template for a COVID-19 safety plan that we know all productions will need to have as they return to safe operations. Right around when we launched into phase 3 in British Columbia, we also released the COVID-19 safety guidelines, which was the work of the BC Motion Picture Best Practices Coalition. And that is a high level, 15 or 16 page document that was meant for review, which it was by a provincial government and also by WorkSafe BC. So that is now live up on our website at Creative BC as well. And the continued work that we got into after that around the pandemic production guide on behalf of the coalition, which has been taking some time, but it's a much more in-depth document that gets into departmental health and safety protocols. And my colleague Phil is going to talk more about that. So that is coming. It has been an immense amount of work. And I want to say a huge shout out and kudos to Paul Clausen with the BC Council of Unions, Jason Lee and Marcia Newberry with CMPA, and Anna and Kana from ACTSE, because they've been working very hard on pulling together all of the various pieces of information with over 13 subcommittee meetings and departmental meetings. So it has been an immense amount of work, but we're very close, and Phil will speak more about that. So I'm just going to do a very quick update in terms of the Film Commission. We have continued to get scripts in over the last few months. We have had a number of the shows, most of the shows that were here filming here in British Columbia prior to the pandemic confirm their return. And those are slowly starting to come back online. And as I said, we continue to receive scripts. It's going to be busy. So we've been working very closely with the studios and CMPA and our purpose-built stages here to make sure that we're keeping up to date on terms of what's happening there. Our industry and community affairs team continues to work very closely with the municipal film offices and provincial permitting agencies about what production will look like when it's returning to work and safe return to operations. As we know, some of the municipalities did not close and continued to stay open, and others haven't and have closed and are just coming back online. So I really encourage everyone within the locations community to do additional time with production and additional time in terms of reach out as you start to look at engaging in conversations around permitting in the municipal film offices. They're all working very hard, and some of them are coming online more slowly, and certainly our team is there to assist as that transitions. So I also wanted to just speak quickly about Real Green, encouraging people to go online and take the free carbon literacy course. They also have been working on COVID-19 sustainable practices and what that's going to look like with how sets are now. We're hoping that that will come online early next week, so please continue to check the Real Green website for that information. And the Clean Power Committee continues to work very closely with the municipal film offices around clean energy initiative, and there's more updates again on our website. And then also I wanted to just speak briefly that we know that there's been some domestic production that's gone into our regions in the last few weeks, and just huge kudos again to our regional film commissions up in the Okanagan, John Summerland, Vicki Weller and Thompson Nicola, and Joan Miller and Kathleen Gilbert on Vancouver Island, who've all been working really hard in terms of getting their regions back up and running in terms of safe return to operations, and so that's been successful. And overall, the Provincial Film Commission and Creative BC remains committed to all aspects of sustainability for the industry, certainly with our policy work with provincial government to support the success of BC's motion picture productions and economically return to safe operations and getting people back to work. Obviously environmentally through Real Green and finding ways to return safely while driving for greener practices on set. And also social sustainability, supporting anti-racism and work towards equity, diversity, and inclusion for the full participation and success of Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ2, people with disabilities, and women in the workforce. A lot of work being done all the way around. And so that's my hopefully quick update. I'll have more information to share as we get into the Q&A, and I want to pass it over to Phil Klapwyk with IATSE 891.
Thanks, Marnie. Thanks for that update. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Phil Klapwyk, the business representative of IATSE Local 891 and the 9,000 artists and technicians that make their living in the motion picture industry in BC. I'm also, as Peter mentioned, one of the vice chairs of MPPIA, and I'm a vice president at the BC Federation of Labor. But before getting into this role, I worked on the floor with a lot of you people out there. I was in the lighting department. I was a gaffer, a rigging gaffer, a best boy, a console programmer for several years, and a lamp operator when I couldn't find any other work. But I did that for over 20 years. And during that entire career, I saw a lot of ups and downs, a lot of ebb and flow in the industry, but nothing compared to what we've gone through with COVID-19. For those who don't know, within 891, we saw about unemployment drop of 95% almost overnight. And it was a shock to the system for everybody. But interestingly, immediately, we saw the membership turn to self-care, supporting each other and reaching out through community action, sewing masks, delivering meals, doing all sorts of incredible volunteer work, which is really heartening. But then, you know, when we got to that phase, we started looking to the future, which is where we started working on what Marnie was talking about, the pandemic production guide. And that is the result of an incredible collaboration of all of the industry stakeholders. With the help of Creative BC, WorkSafe BC, all of the major studios and their safety representatives, as well as their labor representatives, the Canadian producers and the independent producers, all of the unions and guilds, including ACFC, UBCP, ACTRA, Teamsters, ICG 669, and IATSE 891, plus the Vancouver Musicians Association. And on top of that, ActSafe, and to cap it all off, experts who do the jobs. We drew on everybody's collective experience to try to come up with a set of BC industry safe working protocols. And we are so close to the release of this document, and it's fantastic. It's probably more comprehensive than any of the other documents that we've seen in any of the other jurisdictions. And you know what the really interesting thing about it is? All of the major studios that have been participating in the creation of this document are also preparing to bring shows to Vancouver, to BC, and they're working on their safety plans. And now when I'm reviewing the safety plans that we're getting, I'm seeing a lot of cut and paste from what we've produced in this pandemic production guide. The PPG is based on, it has a general opening section, and then it goes into 13 distinct working groups, which have similar sort of challenges in the era of COVID-19. For example, we've kind of put performers with hair and makeup and costume, and they've worked out how they're going to actually do those sorts of tasks, and then come up with protocols for that. So when you see the guide, it will have very instructive ways to actually achieve work safely in this era of COVID-19. This is an incredible process that we've gone through, and there are still little things to work out, because ultimately on set, the responsibility for the safety of the workspace ultimately relies on the employers. But we'll continue to collaborate in this process as we go forward and ensure that that the workspaces that we're going back to are safer than the ones we left prior to COVID-19. The last thing I'd touch on is that, you know, I get calls every single day now from producers looking for access to our availability lists. And they wanted to come here before because we had such incredible talent. We had stable tax incentives, great infrastructure, and support from the Film Commission. But now we've added on to that we have all of the citizens of British Columbia, plus an incredible directive from the public health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry. And we have flattened the curve in British Columbia. We are so incredibly attractive simply because we all participate in making sure that BC is a safe environment to produce. You know, all of the challenges that we face going forward, I see them as another step in the logistics that we normally overcome when we do film production. We have some of the most creative problem solvers in the world working within this industry. And I think, you know, we have to give it to them that all of the people, all of the workers in this industry, all of the employers, we all get it done. And I really think that nothing else has ever made me more proud to be a part of this community. I'd like to pass it on now to Kori Pauw from UBCP ACTRA.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. Hi, everyone. I am Kori Pauw. I'm one of 2 on-set union representatives in the Film, Television, and New Media Department at the Union of BC Performers, ACTRA. We also have the awesome Chloe Thompson getting out on set right now as well. I did want to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you today from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So for me, what I've been experiencing since the beginning of June, I've been on around a dozen different sets shooting here in BC, all the way from Whistler to the Lower Mainland to the interior in the Okanagan. And as such, it's kind of afforded me a really unique vantage point to see how each of these individual productions is adjusting its practices, not only to keep its crew and its cast safe, but get the industry back up on its feet. A really common comment I'm getting from people on set, both cast and crew, is I was nervous to come back. I was scared to come back. I didn't know what to expect. And as such, we're kind of, it's like the first day of school. We're on the same learning curve and figuring out how to safely operate and create in the middle of a pandemic. Right now with the union, there is constant communication between our members on set, the union, and productions. We're really asking productions to identify those moments of close proximity work and figuring out how we can reshoot that scene. We're seeking out solutions to mitigate the risk of performers being in close proximity. The first question we ask is it needed? Can it be shot in a different way? Can you cheat the angles, either of the cameras or the performers? As Phil just mentioned, it's been mentioned here before, we are a creative industry and there's so many different creative solutions to these kinds of scenes. We are seeing intimacy coordinators being engaged on a more frequent basis, and not just for scenes of intimacy, but these scenes of close proximity and direct contact. They are great resources and they have awesome alternative options for productions for these kinds of scenes. And with everything coming back, we're also really seeing that these safety protocols and these safety plans, they are living documents. Information surrounding COVID is constantly changing. And so what works in theory or what looks great on paper in your safety plan might not work by the time you go to camera. So it's important to keep up to date on all the new information. I know WorkSafe has even just issued new guidelines for close proximity and intimate scenes in their return to work protocol. It's also important to keep up to date with the safety plans for the sets that you're on. We are creatures of habit, and sometimes we need a little reminding. We're not used to working in PPE. We're not used to not being able to hug or high five or the colleagues we haven't seen or worked with in months. So it's really important to stay on top of the individual safety plans for each set that you're working on, because no one that I've seen yet is absolutely the same. So ultimately, while filming during a pandemic definitely has its challenges, both expected and unexpected, and with the best practices surrounding COVID-19 constantly evolving, I'm really encouraged from what I've seen on set to see our industry and our community working really safely and effectively during such unusual times. And now with that, I'm going to hand it over to the incredibly talented Norma Patton-Lowen.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I've been in the industry for many years, 48 to be precise. And so I've seen a lot of changes, and this has been something that is challenging everyone on a level that none of us could have even imagined. In the makeup department, as you know, we work very, very closely with the actors, and particularly for makeup, we're right in their faces. So we have taken it really, really seriously. We've, as a group, we've been taking individual courses in various sanitization courses with different companies, so that we can really, really get ourselves up to speed and feel that we are totally on top of all of this. It's very, very important to be safe. We are sanitizing or deodorizing our trailers, in that all our instruments that we use on the actors have to be kept absolutely separate. We have clean boxes and contaminated boxes. So after we've used things on an actor, we then put them into a contaminated labeled box where those things are then taken away and they are cleaned. Every actor, we already keep things fairly separate anyway, but we've got to go the extra mile now and make sure that everything we use on an actor is kept absolutely separate in their own bag, sealed. We have to wear protective clothing, of course, but we have to put protective clothing on them. We're wearing masks and also visors or goggles, whichever we choose. We are in talks to get all the trailers properly ventilated, so that any of the germs, virus can actually be moved out of the trailer. We have to be very, very sure when people come into the trailer that they are already clean, as it were, to come in, and they sit in the chair, and that has to be cleaned before each actor, in between each actor that comes in. It's like working in an operating theatre and beyond. All the products now, we have to be single-use products. We've never double dipped, but we've had things like powder compact, for example. Every single person has to have their own. We cannot use one and spray it to sanitize it for the next one. It has to be separate. So the cost is going to be much more for the production, actually, as we have to buy multiples of everything that has to be kept separate. We have to make sure that anyone coming in to help us on a daily basis is up to speed as well, and that they know exactly how things are and how clean they can be, and how sanitized all their equipment is. It may mean providing things for them too in certain instances. So we are doing our utmost to try and make everything as absolutely clean and contamination free as possible. We take it very, very seriously, and as I said, we work very, very closely with the actors, and we have to make sure they're pulling their weight too and keeping as safe as they can. They normally would come in and sit with their cell phones or their computers and on their laps. That can't happen anymore. We have to be very, very strict about all of that. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight into what we're doing, and obviously we'll be taking questions later, and I'll hand over to Kate Green. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone, happy Friday. My name is Kate Green, and I have a small but growing production company called KGP Films, and we specialize a lot in digital short form content, scripted television series, and documentaries. And today I'm going to be talking about NarcoLeap and a little bit about the show if you don't know. So last season, or season 1, it aired on TELUS Optic TV, CBC Gem, and our YouTube channel. And season 2, we are going to be on Highball TV, as well as NarcoLeap.com and our YouTube channel. And the perspective from which I'm talking today is basically, well, we were all set to go into season 2 when this whole little thing happened. So I don't know if we're not obviously the first to go back to filming, but I think we might be the first low budget BC indie project to go back. So where we're at right now, we've got our safety officer, we have a plan together, we've submitted that to ACTSE, and it's being reviewed at the moment. And of course, we're looking forward to the guidelines as well. As a few of my co-panelists have mentioned, these are evolving and sometimes changing situations and protocols, so you have to be able to adjust as it goes. And we're just taking one day at a time right now. So that is a very short and sweet introduction, but I look forward to questions, and hopefully I can add to the conversation. It's my pleasure to now pass it off to the magnificent Hans Dayal. Hans?
Merci Kate et Peter et Marnie pour la chance ici. Bonjour tout le monde et mes amis dans le secteur de services en particulier. Je suis très content et privilégié d'être invité pour parler avec vous cet après-midi et de partager mon expérience, mon parcours jusqu'ici pour arriver à relancer la production de notre série.
Hans,
Yeah.
sorry
Yes.
to interrupt.
Yeah.
I might not have been clear, but we've approved the English version of your presentation for this particular town hall.
Well, isn't there subtitles? Didn't you get the subtitles in? I thought we were doing subtitles.
That's for the next version.
The next version.
Yeah,
Well,
today it's
okay.
English.
Okay. I mean, at some point we're going to have to represent the French speaking. I mean, it's one of the official languages of our country, and we just want to address, we take so much time addressing all the groups. I think that we should recognize the French in all this I feel a little underrepresented personally.
Well, thanks for doing your part, Hans.
You're welcome. And thank you. I'll get right to it. I just thought we'd start with a little bit of a lighter moment because some of these panels can be tough, and it's a tough time. Anyways, it's been 4 months since this whole crazy thing took hold of our world, and we've all been suffering through it and not being able to return to make movies and television shows and earning our living. And, for me personally, when I heard that we were being shut down, I was so afraid because I've got little kids. And like so many folks, I think we realized really quickly that it wasn't just happening to us. It wasn't just happening to our business, but it was happening everywhere. And there were so many other industries and so many pockets of the world that were going through this exact same thing. I pretty quickly decided, because I was just starting to get really going on this show, Turner and Hooch, to just hold fast and just try to figure out how I could get to work and prepare my friends and my mates and my buds any way that I could. And the first thing was just how do other industries deal with this? So I immediately started fishing around to talk to people and found great occupational health people to advise me, hygienists and people that understood public health very well and how it affects the workplace. I actually was gonna just stop being a talking head here, though everyone has been so inviting to me here today, but I thought I'd share my screen just to show a little graphic, just to illustrate how challenging this whole thing was. Just give me 1 second here. And I think, I hope you can all see this. Let's see here, hold on. There we go. I think you can see that, I would hope. Oh, sorry, that's my, I also built, I was so starved for information that I built a whole Wikipedia for myself for COVID, just so I understood the disease, and all of a sudden I felt like I had a PhD in this thing. But going back through it, or sorry, this is the post graphic, but this is kind of how I see our world, that when we're in production, when we start a show, there's the creative people over here that are writing scripts and talking about how they're going to execute it. Then there's the studio or the employer, the producers, the people that pay for it. And down here is usually the people that I have the most fun with, and that's the government folks and the authorities and all the regulators and people that help tell us what our boundaries and parameters are so that we can execute our plan. Well, this is a very pretty sort of scheme Venn diagram of things. This is what it became like when COVID hit us like a ton of bricks. And all of a sudden I saw this other bubble show up and influence absolutely every aspect of everything we did. So navigating this has been the most challenging and the least fun that I've had in this business, I would probably say, like so many of you. But at the very least, I got the chance to do it, and we're seemingly going to be shooting something at some point soon. I think the studios are still battling a lot of things that I'm sure that Phil and Marnie and Peter can tell you more about. But I know that the studio and our executives have been very inviting and welcoming and taken our ideas, because I don't think in all my time in Hollywood I've ever heard so many people say, I don't know. That was the catchphrase and the start of most conversations and the end of most conversations, those famous words of I don't know. I'll just get right to the end here. I mean, I just thought I'd share that little brief snippet and be a little bit more colorful than a lot of the folks here. I'll just say this. We have to make our environment safe for you guys to work in. So you have to bear with us a little bit. I know it's very tough to consider all the elements, and we're working on it. People are working on it day in, day out, all the time, and it's happening. We're going to get back there. And what I realized above all is that British Columbia's film community is one, it speaks really strongly with one voice. The people here are the finest craftspeople, the finest artists in the world. I've talked to people from all over the world over this, and it's proven itself time and time again. We're doing a great job. We just need to get that over this little hump, just a little bit further over this hump, and we'll be right back at it. And you know, and finally, I just want to say that there's the amount of stress and the amount of hardship that not having a paycheck can bring to people and to a family. It's the most awful part of this whole thing, I think, for everybody. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's absolutely right there. If you could just hunker down, hold fast for just a little bit longer, I think we'll get there, and we'll be back at it in no time. For at least for the folks that I know that live in my world, where we're not in a lot of control over all the aspects, and we can't rely just on provincial guidelines and things like that. We have to look elsewhere for our livelihoods. So hold fast, it's coming, and rest assured, you know, it's there. Just be cool, be kind, all that good stuff. And Vive le Canada. I'm bringing back the Namaste. I'm gonna throw this back to Peter Leitch here, the Nick Nolte to my Eddie Murphy.
Thank Hans, and thanks to all our panelists. We now have some questions that were sent in advance by our audience, so we have time for some of those. If we don't get to your question, be assured that we are going to address the issues, and there's teams of people out there that are going to do that on behalf of the industry. So the first question, Phil, how about you take this one? Will it really be safe to go back to work? I know we've done a lot of work, but is it going to be safe to go back to work?
Well, I honestly think it's going to be safer than it was for a lot of reasons. You know, we're never going to be able to completely eradicate the risk of contracting the COVID-19 virus. That until we have a vaccine and herd immunity throughout, that risk is always going to be there. But whether or not our sets are going to be safer, like if we think to all the crew flus that we've all been through, where one guy gets it, brings it to set, and next thing you know, everybody's down with the flu. I've seen that so often. That's going to be a thing of the past, because as soon as somebody presents with any sort of symptoms like a runny nose, well, they're going to be asked to leave the set simply because it might be COVID-19. So for that reason alone, our sets are going to be so much safer than they were. Also, all of the precautions that are being taken to sterilize, clean, proper hand washing, hygiene, all of that is just going to make for a better process for filmmaking. Is it going to be 100% safe? Well, you know, there's always inherent risk in everything. But I think that our attention to detail now is going to be so heightened that we're going to be safer than we were.
Kate, on that question, are you feeling the same way?
Sorry. About the sets being safer?
Yeah,
absolutely. You know, and we've, you know, like some of us have said before, there's a lot of creative and smart people that work in this industry, and now we're putting that creativity and knowledge and brains towards making sure that things are safe and that they are going to be cleaner and better than they were before. I totally agree.
Great. Thank you. Our second question, do you think we will see more business that was slated for Los Angeles, Georgia, New York will end up in BC as a result of our much better track record in managing the pandemic? Marnie, why don't you take that one on?
Sure, thanks, Peter. It's a great question. Yes, would be my short answer. And we certainly are seeing that now. We're seeing shows that we're set to shoot in Los Angeles or Atlanta or New York, which are all fabulous jurisdictions. And you know, our colleagues are around the world in North America, and we have been working very closely with the AFCI on that. So, you know, it's great to see British Columbia coming back, and we're getting lots of inquiries. We wish those other jurisdictions well and want them to also see low numbers. And there's, you know, families and our fellow colleagues in the industry working around the world. So we are seeing a big uptick. As I said, most shows are set to return here. We've got a lot of other features, series, etc., that are looking in, and some great domestic production as well. So yes, and just, you know, riffing off of that, is that we have been working really closely with some of the other jurisdictions and other areas, and with the Association of Film Commissioners and with the LMGI, and having conversations with them as well, and asking what's happening in their regions, and all sharing information. So, you know, I'm hoping that all production gets back up and running around the world and in North America as well. So.
Thanks for that, Marnie.
Peter, the difference there, of course, is what Marnie just said, is it's the community transmission rate. And in BC, it's not all of us film technicians. It's the fact that we all go home, we have outside social groups that we intersect with. So we're all bringing that back. And it's not even us. So when producers are looking for a place to come, they're looking at the rest of BC, who we intersect with. So, you know, we got to really hand it to all of our family, all of our friends, and the citizens of British Columbia everywhere.
Thanks for that, Phil. Okay, question number 3. As a BC indie low budget producer that doesn't have the finances of a major studio, how are you dealing with the added expenses of safety while following COVID protocols on set? Kate, that sounds like your question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd like to say, first of all, that we're not a big studio show yet. And that actually does tie into my answer to this. So yeah, we don't really have a margin for error. And of course, when we set out, this was not part of the budget at all. And so what I have decided to do is to do a crowdfunding campaign, Indiegogo campaign. And I am fully aware of how difficult that is, seeing that people haven't worked, and I'm completely not ignorant to that fact. But if you do want to see how we've positioned the campaign, if it might be helpful for other producers, it's on NarcoLeap.com. You can go there and check it out. But the other side, if you have done a crowdfunding campaign, you know that the other side of that coin is to also engage the audience and build the audience. And we're doing that because we're developing it into a television series. So that's why I say we're not a big studio show yet, but when we are, we'll have an audience and some great materials to pitch.
So why don't I turn that around a little bit? Hans, you're doing a bit bigger show. How are the finances being impacted as a result of COVID on a bigger show like yours?
Well, you know, I was going to talk about it a little bit, but of course I was taking up too much time earlier. It is a very expensive endeavor for the big studios. And I want to say too that we are emphasizing our local standards and what WorkSafe is asking of us and what our own labor organizations are asking of us. But the studios have a lot more to lose in the sense that, you know, the exposure for them is higher. So they're very rigorous in their ask from us. And they're very supportive, of course, financially they can be, but they've got a lot to lose if something happens. So they're being very proactive and positive about elevating that standard even higher than what the jurisdictions are asking, or because they're blanket, you know, the corporation, for example, Disney in our case, it's all over the world. So they're taking information that they're getting from all over the place, and that's informing how we spend our money for safety and mitigation. So I think it's a great asset to have, and like everyone's saying, that we're going to get to that place where things are cleaner and the standards way higher, and it's going to happen from both ends. That's the great thing about BC, is that we've got that low fi independent thing happening, and as well we've got that information, that kind of stewardship from the big studios, because they've got a lot more resources.
Great.
But again, let me just chime in on that, Hans, as well, is that the fact that everybody's attuned to safety. It doesn't matter your budget level. So, you know, it's funny because you talk to producers of every single level, and and they're all concerned about the worker safety. It's not, that is the common thing throughout all of it. And yeah, it costs a bit more to every production, but again, we can find ways to do it that are creative and outside the box. So I'm just really thrilled that we get to be part of the conversation.
Great, thanks, Phil. Okay, question number 4. Kori, this one's for you. How is production utilizing the use of day players, both principals and background? And will there be less opportunities for these roles?
I mean, certainly from what I've been seeing on set, it's, I know there was a fear in the beginning that these kind of day player roles would be completely eliminated. We wouldn't see them anymore. And it's really not the case in what I'm seeing in terms of, you know, I've seen numbers for background anywhere from 4 to 40. Background are still being used. When it comes to principal performers, I'm still seeing those day player kinds of roles. In terms of how background holding is set up or green rooms are set up, that's definitely a bit different than it was before, where I'm hearing from background performers that holding is some of the largest holding they've had, because they're really trying to allow for that physical distancing, and it's some of the cleanest holding that they've had. And when it comes to principals, I've had shows, I've seen them renting nearby Airbnbs so people have their own space, utilizing homes that have a room, so each performer has a separate green room or separate spaces for your series leads and your day players. So I mean, productions really are working hard. I mean, certainly we're not seeing the 150, 250 person days that we were previously, but there certainly has not been an elimination of day player roles.
Great, thanks for that, Kori. Okay, here's one for you, Marnie. Have any recent shows that you're aware of, shooting in BC or even elsewhere, been shut down as a result of not following COVID rules or as a result of someone testing positive for COVID?
No, not that I'm aware of or that our organization is aware of. We're working very closely with WorkSafe BC and obviously with all of our labor organizations and CMPA and the commercial industry, CPOC. And again, our regional film commissioners and our municipal film offices. So we have a pretty good beat on what has been filming and are hearing back from productions, from commercials to domestic productions about how things have gone and what they've learned, and the recommendations that WorkSafe has given when they have visited set. So, you know, fingers crossed, not as of yet that we're aware of, you know, so. Yeah, none as of yet, which is really good news.
So Phil, I suspect, you know, in the pandemic guide, there's certainly protocols in place, and in case, you know, someone does come down with something, I guess it goes into isolation and contact tracing, etc. Any comments on that?
Yeah, certainly. Not only in the pandemic production guide, but in all of the safety plans that I've been reading. And I've been fortunate that almost all of the producers that are setting up offices have been sending in their safety plans for us to actually review and to give them thoughts if we had any issues with. But they all deal with people who develop symptoms either on set or off set, or attend to the workplace and then become sick during the day. And generally it's isolation and then removal, cleaning and sanitization. But the person is definitely directed to contact the public health authorities and to go through the 811 and get an assessment there, as well as possibility of testing and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's fully contemplated in each one of the safety plans I've seen.
Of course, Kori, I guess it's a real challenge if it's a cast member or a significant cast member. Maybe Kate and Hans could weigh in on that also.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hop in there first. It definitely is a major fear, and that's a common comment as well that I'm hearing from productions is if something happens to one of our cast members, if one of them goes down, we go down. There's not really any replacing. So it is a large concern for sure.
And I guess a priority in terms of safety precautions for sure.
Yes, of course.
I would add too, I mean, for us, that's our number one driver of how we're thinking. You know, I always say to people that come to start working in film that what we shoot is the key thing of why we're there. And if we don't have actors, I mean, if we're still photographers or if we're shooting documentary films about nature, then that's one thing. But really most of us are earning our living from telling stories, fiction stories, and that's where a lot of the big money is. And we need actors for that. So if we don't have actors that are safe and healthy and comfortable, we're not getting performances out of them. We're not getting, we have to rewrite stories and things like that. It's all impacted by what happens in front of the camera. That's the root of our whole business, in my view, in this world at the very least, in service production for sure. And so without having that safe space for performers, the whole thing's bunk. So just imagine, that's what I would also say to locations. For example, when we go to shoot on location, we tell them, if we don't have this very safe and have managed the risk as much as possible in that space where we're shooting, we're not going to be able to be successful. It just won't be successful. So it's a very sacred space.
Thanks,
on top of that, Peter, there are key creative people that are not replaceable, like Norma, for example, that work within the crafts that I represent. And I have heard of productions that are putting entire secondary crews on retainer, just in case somebody can't come into work for one day. For example, if they have a camera operator, they'll have a B camera operator, but no B camera, and that person will be paid to stay at home. And if the camera operator becomes ill, then the B camera operator would step in to fill the shoes. It's a challenge for certain, and we have to maintain that safe circle. But that's one way of solving that problem too.
Okay, next question. Norma, as a makeup artist, I sort of look at your relationship similar to a dentist-patient relationship in terms of proximity. So what special protection? Are you going to look like a dentist, or what will be required to allow you to be in a close proximity? And what steps do you take if someone appears that they may not be well?
Well, firstly, if somebody appears not to be well, then that would have to be reported to the COVID officer, who would then take it to production. If it was a cast member, obviously, as we've already said, that's a much bigger deal. That could cause the shutting down of production. If it was one of my team, then we would hopefully be able to stand in for each other. So, but it has to go to the COVID officer first to make their decision on that. The precautions we're taking, yes, we're dressing like surgeons. So masks and also visors or goggles. We've really not using gloves so much. There are certain situations where we'll use gloves, but washing hands frequently and for the allotted time that we all know about, singing happy birthday or whatever, that is much more effective. And that's a case of washing hands before the actor comes and sits in the chair, and they have to do the same before they come in. Everything, as I said, has to be kept completely separate in separate containers, labeled containers, one-use items, disposable. We're just getting used to recycling and all of that, and now that's gone out the window. We have to actually now have lots of disposables. So it's not very cost effective, but we have to do that. We have the choice. I will for sure be wearing some kind of like a lab coat, something like that, to cover my own clothes, that I don't have to worry about my personal clothes being contaminated before I go home. So keeping our spaces, normally would have our makeup stations set up with everything that we need to do the job, but now everything has to be put away into individual containers inside drawers and cupboards and brought out for each actor. And the sanitized or disinfected is a more appropriate word actually, between every single cast member. Everything has to be completely clean, and that takes time between each person. So that's adding on to production time as well. So, but we're also doing, I'm in touch with 706, which is the LA union, and also the union in England, because I belong to all of them. I work in both places. I work down south as well. So I'm liaising with them and finding out what their protocols are and trying to implement those within our own protocols here, so that it's across the board and we're all up to speed. So.
Great. Thanks for that, Norma. Hans, this is with your job as a location manager for so many years. What are the steps we need to take to give those that own or manage property confidence that everyone will be safe if they allow us to use their locations?
It's a great question, and it's a pretty key one because without our locations, we really run out of places to shoot in a quick hurry. I think that we started a group with Creative BC and a lot of location managers to make sure that we were getting the right information, because I think that's a key thing about how to plan for preparing a location when we have such small turnaround times. So communicating to them that we're well researched and well thought out, and that we have information that's accurate, and we have information that's standardized and respects their standards, because a lot of especially larger institutional locations have their own requirements that we have to meet. So I think that stuff is important to communicate. I think, again, I'll go back to saying that a lot of us that work in service and have the money to go to a lot of different locations to shoot, the companies themselves have very high standards, exceeding WorkSafe's asks and things like that. So they've got protocols and outlined very strict guidelines around how we can work on location, because of course they're worried about their liability and their concerns there and the risk to them. So I think it's about communication. It's always a principle, location management, to communicate very well, to have good standards that are across the board and universal. And I think we've done that here locally, and I think that it's actually raised the level internationally too, because we have shared that information with our colleagues and friends at the LMGI, which is a great avenue for us to speak to people from all the different jurisdictions. So yeah, I'll go back to communication, Peter. That's the number one thing that we can do, is just keep that conversation going, making sure that we're well informed, and honoring what people ask of us, which is something that we always do. I always say, and I think a lot of locations people always say, always leave the place better than you found it. And that's what we're going to carry on doing here in BC.
Good stuff. Okay, thanks, Hans. Kate, you're a creative producer. So how has the creative changed or been influenced as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, good question. It's actually been something that I've really enjoyed. It's been fun to kind of figure out, how do we socially distance? How do we make the scene still work creatively? Maybe just I can give some examples. For instance, driving scenes. No longer do we have 3 actors in a vehicle together. They've pulled over on the side of the road and there's a flat tire. Or our big kind of ending finale happens at like a safe house, like a mansion. But we've turned it into a summer home, so everything's covered up in plastic and sheets. We've got soldiers now that are coming in that might be wearing balaclavas. Just the ideas like this that you start kind of spitballing and try to make it work and still get your story across. We're looking at having a kiss take place, but in the astral realm. So it would be visual effects, and the actors wouldn't actually be kissing. So it's just been fun to kind of use your mind creatively and figure out how do you still get it across. But yeah, absolutely, the creative has changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kori, you've visited all these sets. Has there been any surprises in regards to protocol that you thought might work, or other things that work better?
Definitely. And I mean, it kind of harkens back to what I was talking about earlier with what looks great on paper might not necessarily work in practice. A big one, and Norma might be able to speak to this a bit more as well, a lot of safety plans are suggesting that performers will be in PPE right up to the point of filming. And that sounds great until you get there and you realize that in putting a performer in a mask, it wipes away a lot of the hard work that makeup has put in, and then it involves even more touches and more time in close proximity. So that's been kind of an interesting one to see productions figure it out and the solutions kind of evolve. And what I'm seeing now that productions are doing are a face shield, but instead of it being on the headband, because then that'll mess up the hard work of hair, they're on a set of glasses. So it just kind of slides onto your face and you're not messing anything up. And there's other things too, like some productions are great in the morning in terms of they have their plan set out for your COVID set check and all that kind of stuff. But then once you have a second wave, maybe of background performers or crew coming in the afternoon, they don't necessarily have those protocols set up for those groups coming in later in the day. So we're trying to remind productions of that, to keep in mind that you do have different waves. We're not a normal 8:30 to 4:30 job.
Great. Well, thanks. Well, I think we're running out of time on questions. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the great work and support and leadership from Creative BC and Prem and Marnie and the team there. They've really shown strong leadership throughout this process, so really appreciate that. I'd also like to thank our panel. That was an interesting discussion today, and for all their continuing contributions, and thank our audience for taking the time to participate in this town hall. We've not set a date yet for our third town hall, but we know we're going to have one when we really get started up. Just share some of our experiences and what's happening, and you know, as Kori mentioned, some of the changes that happen on the fly, and Phil mentioned. I'd really like to thank the engine of MPPIA, Amber and Leslie Wooten, Amber Orchard and Leslie Wooten, for all the work they do in making this all happen. So really appreciate that. And I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. But before we sign off, I'd like to turn this back to Marnie G, BC Film Commissioner, with some final comments. Marnie.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to echo thanks to MPPIA, to yourself, Peter, in terms of the leadership MPPIA has shown, and also to Amber Orchard and Leslie, again, the engine. I like the way you put that. I just wanted to say quickly, again, just thank you. But before I do, I just really encourage everyone that's listening today, tuned in, to you know, hopefully there was some answers to the questions, and I think one of the panelists said there's a lot of I don't know still, but I really encourage everyone to don't hesitate to reach out to your labor organization, or to CMPA, or to Creative BC, or to MPPIA, to our Film Commission team. If there's something that you've heard that doesn't sound right, or you're not getting the information you want, we don't have all the answers by any means, but there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think there's, you know, all of us have been scared, and we start to hear things, and it kind of takes off. So I just really encourage you to find a resource that you trust, to reach out. If you don't have one, please call our office, and we'd be happy to talk to you as we move through this. And we're all trying very hard to get it right. As I said, Phil said earlier, there's a lot of very bright people that are working very hard to make sure that we have safe return to operations in British Columbia. We're going to have to probably pivot a little bit from what we think is going to work, but there's a lot of people that care about the industry here and its safe return to operations. So please don't hesitate to reach out, because we're all here. And so with that, I just wanted to say thank you to the province and to our Ministry, Tourism, Arts and Culture, Minister Bear, for all the work that they've been doing in terms of bringing our industry back up online, and Premier Horrigan, and also to Prem Gill and the leadership from our organization as well. And huge thanks to all my panelists, fellow panelists as well. And I really look forward to our continued work together. And happy Friday.
Thanks all.
Thank you.